get into this story coming out of Minneapolis. Many of you probably heard about it already now. I am bringing in Garland Nixon. Most of you are familiar with Garland Nixon. Garland Nixon is the host of the Garland Nixon Show on YouTube. He also has a radio show. But Garland Nixon also at one point was a law enforcement officer. And so I thought it would be good to bring on someone who may also have that perspective when we're discussing this particular story. Now, I have my opinion about this. I have not talked to Garland about this. I don't know how he feels about this or what he's going to say before he comes on. I just asked him if he would come on and give that perspective. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Welcome back, Garland Nixon. What's going on?
Oh my gosh, things are just wonderful. You know, this is a time when you don't say, boy, what else could happen? Nobody say that, please. You know,
I know. Okay,
but also you have to add, yes, I was a law enforcement, but I also worked with the ACLU. I worked for the ACLU specifically on the issue of police accountability, and I was recognized nationally for my work on police accountability. And then I was on the National Board of Directors. So I worked on this issue after I left law enforcement for many years.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So I'm going to show a couple of things, and then I'm going to go back to you, Garland, to get your take on this. For those who are not aware, the other day in Minneapolis, there was a woman. She was in her car. Her name is Renee, I believe. She was in her car, and there were ICE agents. So for those who are not aware, there's ICE agents all over like Minneapolis right now. And the video has gone viral. There have been multiple videos showing different angles, etc. Long story short, she backs up her car. I'm going to show you in just a second. And then from what I saw, it looked as though, looking at her wheels, that she was trying to turn and drive away. And unfortunately, what ended up happening was that one of the ICE agents shot her and killed her, shot her in the face and shot 3 times. And so let me go through a couple of this first, and I'm going to bring in Garland's perspective here. Donald Trump gave this statement. I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. So this was false. We'll show you guys in just a second. This situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. So that was the statement that Donald Trump gave very quickly. And Ryan Grimm shared a slow-mo video of what happened. We will have to pause in between there because I can't show someone being shot on YouTube. But you guys will get the gist of it. Ryan Grimm said, if you watch the beginning of this carefully, you can see the shooter appears to have his phone on his left hand, in his left hand. Good chance he is filming. All right, so we're going to start this slow-mo, and then, like I said, I have to stop because I can't show them actually shooting her. But this is what it looks like in slow motion. So you can see it says here, agent goes to pull the gun. She tries to turn. And we have to pause it here and we have to bring it out. I'm sorry, guys, but that's just how YouTube is. And then we'll bring it back in here. He moves to the side of the car. He leans over. So there are 2 people here. This is what people have to understand. There's an agent right here that's right beside the car. And then there's an agent towards the front of the car. What Ryan Grimm is pointing out here is that if you look at the bottom and you look at his legs, you can see at this point he had moved to the side of the car. She tries to turn. So let me bring this back out. And then I'll bring it in here. Here we go. Okay. So they're identifying first shot here. So that was when the first shot happened. As you can see, there's 2 feet here and there's 2 feet here, but it didn't end with the first shot. That's the other thing. So let me bring this back out. And then another thing they pointed here, they said the feet on the side of the car. So at this point, and I think some people may argue the first shot, but even at this point, both of them are on the side of the car. And then there is a second shot right here. And this is the one that I think is the most damning from my opinion, from what I saw, just from the angle. There's another shot here. As you can see, again, the car is going this way. And Ryan Grimm is pointing out he's completely on the side at this point, but it didn't end there. And then there was a third shot right here. And at this point, the vehicle is, obviously not near the officer at all. So this is, a lot of people have questions, Garland. And I'll tell you my opinion based on what I saw. But I want to get your take first. And let me just show this here. This is another thing that people were pointing out was the phone. So apparently there's a close up here. This is the guy who people are saying was hit by the car. And this agent, at this point, he had his cell phone. So maybe he was filming, maybe he was taking a picture. I don't know. But the point that people are making is that if he felt his life was in so much danger, why was he standing there with a cell phone? So before I go further, because there's other things I do want to show, Garland, again, you were law enforcement. Who is in the right and who is in the wrong here based on the law?
Well, the law basically that would address this particular issue is Tennessee versus Garner. It's 1985. And basically that was derived from an instance where a 10-year-old boy had like a purse with $10 in it running, and a police officer shot him. And they basically argued they had the authority to shoot him. Well, the case ended up in jail for like 11 years. And the final finding was basically that when a police officer shoots someone, it's considered a seizure. They're seizing the person's body, which means you have Fourth Amendment protections. And when they determine that a person had Fourth Amendment protections, that changes everything for this reason. Because the question becomes, initially the question was, doesn't a police officer have the authority to use deadly force, right? But since now we talk about Fourth Amendment protections, which is a protection from unreasonable search, and in this case, seizure, seizing your person, stopping your ability to move around. Now the question is not, does the officer have the authority to shoot it? It's, does the officer have the justification to do it? So rather than authority, it's justification. And that also can apply to any use of force. Not do they have the authority, do they have the justification to use of force? Now, there's two parts of it. Number one, and there is the reality of what happened on the ground. Like so many other instances, you can easily look at that and see they had no reason to shoot her. That the idea that those officers couldn't step aside, that they couldn't get in the way, that she was trying to run him over, that she was about to run him over is patently absurd. It is clear looking at that they were standing beside the car. And in fact, they backed up a couple steps, and they could have always backed up. Why were they standing so close to the car, dangling in the car, what have you? And here's the other thing, that as she drove away, which clearly by the time they were starting shooting, she was almost away. So the question would then be, are you going to argue that once she got away, that she presented a threat to the community? Because now in a use of force instance, for instance, if an officer sees somebody running away and they've got a gun and they're shooting, or they're a serial killer, whatever the case may be, if an officer can say this person was trying to escape and this person would present a threat to the community, they can use force then, right? It's a fleeing felon rule. But at any rate, clearly, she was not presenting any threat to their lives. or anyone else. She was trying to get away. She was unarmed. Now the issue is going to be, well, but she was in a car. A car is dangerous. You're standing beside the car. You're not in front of the car. The wheel was turned away from you. The wheel didn't turn towards them so she could go into it. The wheel turned away, which means they were pulling away. And so the officer made the decision. So here's the point. Clearly, these officers were wrong, and they did not have justification to use deadly force. However, sadly, in the United States, in the same way that you looked at Donald Trump's statement, that was not a statement of fact. That was a political position. The political position is anytime a police officer shoots, I'm going to back it as being right. Right? That's what you get. Anytime a cop shoots somebody, I'm going to support the cop that it was right, no matter whether it was right or wrong. That's a political position. And that's what Donald Trump was. He just wrote things. Look, his position was the cop was right, and I'm supporting the cop. So he just wrote something that wasn't necessarily true, but it needed to be true in order to support his political position. It was a political position, not. And sadly, in the United States, and I've seen this. I mean, I know of one instance where a young kid, black kid, he had an issue with in Maryland, Lower Eastern Shore, down near Ocean City. He had an issue. Now listen to this. Tell me he was a danger to the cop. He had an issue with a ticket. He had gotten a ticket for like having his light broke or something not working. You know what I mean? One of these safety inspection tickets, like a light out or something. And he got it fixed. And you know how in some places you get like a safety inspection ticket, you got to go to the local police barracks, show them, you know, that you got it fixed, and then turn the light on that it works, and then they can sign off of it and off you're going. It was one of those instances. So he goes there. There's some police officer at getting gas or something. The officer claims the guy tried to run him over and shot him. He was like a 20-year-old kid. There was why? You know what I mean? He stopped by we're supposed to believe that he stopped by the police department to take care of a safety ticket. And then he just decided to run over one of the cops, and it was absurd. It made no sense. But of course, guess what happens in court every single time? So what we have two things. We have legal standards that say that the police officer has to have justification. And we've got Tennessee versus Garner, and we got all of that. Sure, that's all there. But politically speaking, they back the cops, and the cops shoot somebody, and you'll see what you saw with Donald Trump. Doesn't matter what happened. And when he writes it up, that poor officer, he was run over. He was flown out to shock trauma. He barely escaped with his life. I didn't see that. I saw a guy shoot somebody and step back a couple steps. I mean, maybe he twisted his ankle or something, jumping back or something. But if you'd have read Donald Trump, you'd have think the man was half dead. That they backed over him 3 or 4 times. It was a political statement, nothing more. And unfortunately, that's what you run into in America. The cops, the ICE, whoever can shoot civilians all they want. They can beat them. They can do whatever they want to. And when they get to court, politically speaking, they always let them get away with it. With very few examples otherwise.
Well, here's another thing here that I do want to show people because, like I said, there's so many different videos that are posted about this. But one of the things I didn't notice before is that she was telling them, let me go ahead and put this up here. Hold on. Listen to what said here. She was waving. You see the hand? Mm-hmm. How she was waving them through. That's another thing that people were saying, that she was telling them to go ahead and go. Right?
Why did they walk? Why? I don't even know why they came over to her truck. What was going on?
Well, she was saying when the agents this is what David said here. When the agents get out, you can hear her say, "I'm pulling out." I don't know why we can't hear it on here. I don't know what happened with could just be that video.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the idea that she decided, I mean, just even like I said, it's like the kid at the police station with the safety ticket. The idea that you drive down there, he like told his dad, "Hey dad, I gotta run over to the station and do this. And then when I come back, I'm gonna go to the basketball court." And he goes over there. Next thing you know, they find out he's shot. And the cop's like, "You tried to run me over." Makes no sense. And the idea that this woman, a mother of you know, the 30-some-year-old mother just out of the blue decided to run over a couple of cops is absurd. And then, oh, she's a whatever, you know, she's some kind of an agitator, or she's some kind of a terrorist or something. The whole thing is absurd. But that's America. The cops can do whatever they want to you, and 99.999% of the time, they're going to walk.
So I'm going to show you what the eyewitness said really quick, because it seemed like there was some confusion here, as well as the direction that was given from the agents.
And I was screaming at her to move, move, move. And then they got really aggressive and went over to her driver's side door and tried to open her door. And then she obviously got spooked and started to reverse. And then an officer approached her and leaned across, like got in front of her vehicle, and then leaned across the hood of her car.
The hood of her car. And again, I can't show the shot here. So this is where we're getting conflicting information, but this is one of the eyewitnesses. So she is saying that I guess they were telling her to move. They were telling her to go. At least one of them were telling her to go. And then the other one was coming up to the car saying, get out of the car. So you got two different things being said to you. And then here's another question that I have, Garland. When he shot her, considering the fact that she was in a vehicle which was turned on, there's a possibility that she could have actually hit a person, because when they shot her 3 times, for those who are not aware, her foot basically, once her head went down, her foot basically went down on the gas pedal, and the car accelerated and it crashed into another car. But he wasn't thinking about the welfare of the other ICE agents either. That car could have hit a person or anything other than just another car. So that's the other thing I wonder about as well, like not thinking that you're shooting this person in the face, and the car has no one controlling the wheel. So you put other people in danger. I'm curious about your perspective about that.
Only from a legal perspective. I mean, the whole thing is farcical. You know, the whole discussion of whether this guy was in danger and whether he was justified shooting her is just absurd, and it's a farce. But from the legal perspective, it would be, you know, did he feel his life was in danger at the time and he had to shoot her to protect himself, right? Now, the sad thing is the court, more often than not, here's what the court will say, right? The court generally finds this: well, we have to lean towards the officer because the officer is in a stressful situation and they only have a couple of seconds to make a decision. So the court's going to lean towards them because they've got seconds, fractions of a second to make a decision. And so the bottom line is this: what it means is the cops can always get away with shooting you. And now somebody in there mentioned, well, when it came to the George Floyd, the guy was convicted. I mean, literally, George Floyd said, "You're killing me." He literally said, "You're killing me," and the guy killed him. I mean, to me, I'm just saying that ain't nothing to brag about. You know, that's just so over the top that, yeah, I don't see how they could have not convicted him, although it was still in question in America. People got to understand that. I mean, the courts rule in favor over and over, always.
I just wanted to add, J.D. Vance said today during the press conference that ICE agents have immunity.
Well, okay, the issue of qualified immunity, where qualified immunity comes in is in a civil case. For instance, when a police officer shoots someone, right? Okay, so you've got the criminal and the civil perspective. The criminal perspective is the courts look at it and they decide, you know, whether or not to charge the person. The person may even be charged, but when it comes to a finding of guilt, it has to be, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt. And some argue beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty, right? We are certain, there's no doubt, reasonable doubt that person did it. That's a finding in a criminal case. Now, let's say the officer's charged or not charged. The family can still come back and sue in a civil case. A civil case is a preponderance of the evidence for a finding on behalf of the plaintiff. A preponderance of the evidence simply means 51-49, 51% chance that it did versus 49 that it didn't. It's just a preponderance. It's more likely that it did than it didn't. So the family can come back and sue. However, the issue of qualified immunity comes in, wherein a government official acting in the scope of their duties, is generally immune from these types of lawsuits, basically. In fact, I got it in here somewhere. I can find it. But yes, that's qualified immunity, where oftentimes, more often, there we go, a legal doctrine that shields government officials from being sued for discretionary actions performed within their official capacity, unless their conduct violates clearly established statutory or constitutional rights. So basically, oftentimes, in order to sue the officer has to be charged and found guilty. If they're charged and found guilty, then you got a chance. But if they're not charged or found guilty, then usually qualified immunity is going to block them. Now, at times, you do have times where the local authorities or whoever won't fight it, and they'll just settle the lawsuit. But so that's what you're dealing with. So in this instance, it's clear and obvious that they're wrong. It's clear and obvious that the officer's life was not threatened.
But Garland, it's not to everybody. That's what I'm saying. Like, to everybody is not saying that they were in the wrong, because there's different angles of the video, and there's one part of the video where it shows the front, and people are saying that, see, she hit him with the car. And then there's other angles that are like, no, she didn't hit him with. No, everybody is not saying that. Everyone's not saying that they were in the wrong. Like, there are many people I saw online are saying that they were in the right because she was going to run him over, or that he didn't know if she was going to run him over. And in fact, let me play this real quick and I'll come back to you. This is what Kristi Noem said after this happened.
Minnesota, it was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened, it was our ICE officers were out in enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. And my understanding is that she was hit and is deceased. We're continuing.
So see, Kristi Noem put that message out very quickly, that she tried to run him over. And that was also the same thing that Donald Trump said. So you know how it is, like, whoever gets the narrative out first, that's usually the one people are more likely to believe. But even after looking at the videos, people were still saying, well, she blocked the road. And there's some discrepancy over that. Her ex-husband contacted media earlier and said that she was not one of the protesters. Now, that's different from what I heard the other day. The other day, people were saying that she was one of the protesters, or she was an observer, but her ex said that she had just dropped her kids off from school, and that's why she was in that area, but that she wasn't one of the protesters. So that's another question I have. If they're blocking the road, does that give law enforcement the right to shoot to kill?
So all of those things are irrelevant. The only thing that matters in this, is which was a lethal force case, is at the time that the officer did the officer could he have a justifiable reason to fear for his life of significant harm or death or that of others. So all the other things, what was going on at the time, who she was. So that's why I would say this. Those who are saying she's a domestic terrorist, she's this, she's that, they're building a political case. They're not talking about the case, because the case is irrelevant. And I mean, all those things, whether she was protesting or not, is irrelevant. At the time that he pulled that trigger, did he have the justification? Did he have a reason to believe that his life was in danger? Looking at that, I don't see how he could have, because she was behind her car. Her wheels were turned the other way, and she was pulling away from him. And to me, it should be a high standard. It shouldn't be the minimum standard. It couldn't be that because it doesn't even sound like it's justifying. If I can find any reason to say that my life was in danger, well, it was an icy day and I could have slipped and slid under the car. Anything I can make up to say I felt my life was in danger, as opposed to true justification where you can look at it and any reasonable and prudent person can say, yep, that officer's life was in danger. I was a police officer for 27 years. His life was not in danger. Clearly,
This is why I wanted you guys to hear
I
from
dealt with that
someone
kind of
who-
stuff. I dealt with that kind of stuff before. I've seen these kinds of things happen on many occasions. And you don't have to pull a gun out and fire in that instance. And you know what I would have done if I him? I'd have just kept backing up.
Well, let me
I
show
just
you
took a couple more steps. He was, first of all, he did he get killed? By the time she was shooting at her and she was still driving away. He was like behind the window. She was a few feet from him, still driving away. He's still firing. Why? She's driving away. He still feels threatened. It was absurd to me. But the fact of the matter is, in America, from a political perspective, the cops can do whatever they want to. I mean, you will see the most egregious instances of cops using lethal force and that they just walk. I know of an instance, and I had officers on the force tell me, then they felt bad. Said, yeah, everybody, these words, and everybody knows that was a bad shoot. Everybody knows it was a bad shoot. So what these officers were saying, everybody on their agency knows. They felt bad. They're telling me like, oh man, everybody knows. But everybody also knew that the guy was going to walk.
And then, well, the other thing too, I want to show people is what it actually says for DHS, like what the memo actually says. So moving vehicles, people need to see this. Moving vehicles, vessels, aircrafts, and conveyances. DHS LEOs are prohibited from discharging firearms at the operator of a moving vehicle, vessel, aircraft, or other conveyance unless the use of deadly force against the operator is justified, understood, articulated elsewhere in this policy. Before using deadly force under these circumstances, the LEO must take into consideration the hazards that may be posed to law enforcement and innocent bystanders by an out of control conveyance. And this is what I was saying, Garland, when he shot at her, he didn't think about the fact of that vehicle could have hit anyone. It could have hit the other ICE agents. It could have hit a kid. It could have hit anyone else. And that just wasn't even thought of. And you know what's happening now? They just announced the FBI is taking over this case.
Look, I remember the infamous Freddie Gray case, right? And I was working for the ACLU when that happened. And you may remember, the woman's name was Marilyn Mosby. She was the state's attorney for Baltimore, and she went after the officers and tried to charge them. And she stated, because so the FBI is going to take over, but it doesn't matter. But look, the federal government's going to innovate. The federal government police officer are going to investigate another federal government police officer. Marilyn Mosby said that the Baltimore City internal investigations, was acting as part of the defense team. She complained about that, right? In other words, internal investigations was creating an internal investigation designed to get these officers off. So she had no chance, and she tried to charge them. But what happened to Marilyn Mosby? You know what happened to Marilyn Mosby? About 2 years later, she got charged by the FBI. They charged her. Now she had bought a property down in Florida, and think about this. They went over the documents that she wrote and found, they said like, well, she said she was going to use it for, not for personal use, and she rented it out or something. In other words, the FBI had to go pull her real estate documents and go over line by line to find something. And then they charged her. So she went after the cops legitimately. She complained because, hey, look, I'm trying to prosecute this guy, and the Baltimore City Police is supposed to be doing an independent investigation, and the internal affairs are working with the defense team, right? FBI charged her 2 years later and came after her, the city state's attorney, and her husband, which was, think about that. So the bottom line was, it was clear that not only was law enforcement working to cover up law enforcement, the FBI came in later and went after her because she had the unmitigated gall to try to charge the officers in the Freddie Gray case who were obviously wrong.
Yeah, I remember that. So you got to deal with that as well, right? When you try to go after the officers. And there's another connection too that I want people to see. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but people are calling out the connection between ICE and the IDF in Israel. You guys have got to see this. I thought this was pretty important.
And we just found out that a lot of ICE agents are actually IDF soldiers.
This is crazy as fuck. I need everybody to save this video just in case it gets taken down again. I just did a video about 30 minutes ago. I've been trying to get it appealed. The appeal did not get approved. Anyways, I presented some identities, okay, of certain ICE agents located specifically in Chicago. A group that I associate myself with went through some public records and found over 2,000 ICE agents, right? Well, throughout those 2,000 ICE agents, specifically 121 of them, right, had experience as an ex-IDF soldier. If you went up and down this entire list of individuals, you'd notice that their last names in particular, right, all lead back to one specific location with no other job experience. And maybe it won't let me post it because it's personal information. I have no idea. But there's literally a whole motherfucking list of these people and they all look the same, which tells me exactly why they're choosing to hide their faces. Because just imagine, right, if some information like that were to get out, which is why I'm making this video once again. I'm just saying, if you look into the background of these specific individuals, you might notice that they're not exactly a U.S. citizen.
So this is another thing I wanted to talk about was the connection between ICE and the IDF. Now, we talked before about the NYPD's connection to the IDF, but now we're hearing more about ICE. And he's saying that he had a list of names of ICE agents that were actually former IDF soldiers.
Well, the Israelis are all over law enforcement in the United States, in training particularly. They're training all over the place. Remember that Cop City thing? And the Israelis were involved in that. So they are involved in the Praetorian Guard. You know, they're involved in the basically those who are in the same way that they're over there marching around at checkpoints, brutally keeping the Palestinians in line. Well, they're marching around, keeping us in line. They're training the police officers. They're training people to write policies. They're all over, you know, all over the law enforcement, all over those who, whose job it is to keep us in our place and to keep us all in line. People need to wake up and understand that. Not just ICE, all over law enforcement, not just here. Anywhere you find the United States government, in Colombia, wherever, the DEA, anywhere you find the U.S. Law enforcement and the U.S. training people, there's going to be Israelis all over, crawling all over it.
Okay, Garland, do you have a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Okay, I know you got something else. There's something else I wanted to show you because people brought this up as well. I do think this is important. This is why we were screaming about this a couple of years ago. Do you remember this chart, Garland, about the ICE funding?
No.
Boosting ICE funding is bipartisan. So I believe this was, we talked about this. I think I talked about it last year. But what it shows you is that the Republicans and the Democrats have continued to increase funding to ICE over the years. It's just continued to go up and up and up and up. And so I'm saying this because I've seen some of the Democrats like online say, well, see, this wouldn't, but the thing is, as soon as you ask them, like Chuck Schumer, should we abolish ICE? They don't want to answer the question. Here's Chuck Schumer right here.
Should ICE be abolished, Senator? Will you use?
I have lots of problems with ICE.
Should it be abolished?
Thank you.
Well, will you guys use the appropriate? Will this be a red line in this upcoming funding fight? A lot of people want to know how you guys plan to do this, and will it lead to a shutdown? Will it be a red line, ICE restricting ICE funding in the funding fight? Can you explain?
Tim Walz stepped down as governor. How can we be trusted?
So my thing is, Garland, people are getting killed. It's not just this woman, Renee, that was just killed. There was another American they said was killed like 2 weeks ago or a week or so ago. So that's two within 2 weeks. And given what JD Vance said, that ICE soldiers, agents have immunity, that
which, like all law enforcement, qualified immunity. That is an issue.
But what that tells people is that the ICE agents can kill anybody. It doesn't matter if you were someone that they believe is illegal, that they were looking to arrest. They can kill any one of us.
Well, I think what you have to do, and I always do this, foreign policy and domestic policy are inextricably linked. You're looking at people that committed genocide. You think they really care about human life? They don't care any more about the people here. If we get in their way, if we're an aggravation, if we push back, against them. They just as soon rub us out, kill us up, wipe us out as they would the Palestinians. That's the reality. And basically, in the same way that they train, brutal, vicious imperial thugs to go around the world kidnapping, marauding, and murdering, right? As the system falls apart, as it gets too expensive for people to live, as people don't have can't afford health care, as people's lives go straight to hell, they're like, yeah, people are going to become unhappy and they're going to get mad at us because we ain't going to do anything for them. We better be able to put them down. We better be able to have some people to beat them down, shoot them, do whatever we need to do. We have to keep them in line. So what do they do? I mean, remember the Capitol Police? They added $2 billion. I mean, they had like $100 million budget and they boosted it up to $2.5 billion. They always have more money to go to. The Pentagon budget is always going to go way up, and law enforcement budget, because one of them is to keep the people overseas in line and the other one is to keep us in line. And as they do nothing for us and screw us over, and they know we're going to get madder and angrier and angrier, they're going to make sure that they got somebody to keep us in line, because they know it's just a matter of time before people can't take it anymore and they start to rise up out of desperation and revolution, and they got to be ready to stop that revolution. And Chuck Schumer, that's the machine. He answered the question, actually. Will you abolish ICE? Well, he answered it. No, hell no. Don't even ask me. You don't even deserve an answer to that. What he should have said is, if you're stupid enough that you don't know the answer to that, well, then I don't have to answer you. That's what he should have said. I know the answer. I wouldn't even have to ask him.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say is I think the reason why Trump might be freaking out a little bit, because he's starting to walk back what he said as well, is because some of the conservatives are calling this out as well. And I was very shocked to see even the Hodge twins, of all people, Trump telling everybody this dude is recovering in the hospital is crazy as hell. That's the guy. And he was not recovering in that guy was totally fine. He walked down the street, was totally fine.
He said she ran over him. And he was recovering in the hospital.
That's what I'm saying. People said he was run over. He was walking down the street totally fine afterwards. And then another one was Geraldo Rivera, who came out and spoke out against what ICE just did.
I have to stress that emotionally, that might have been me, that woman there. That's how moved I am and how angry I am, but by what I'm seeing. I'm seeing what Governor Walz, for all his problems, was absolutely right yesterday when he said bringing the ICE agents into this Minneapolis community was going to cause trouble, was going to cause violence, maybe deadly violence. He said it was predictable and avoidable. And yet it happened anyway. It happened almost as if they were following the script of how to screw things up and make things worse when you're supposed to be, in pursuit of some national goal, the ridding the country of undocumented immigrants.
So that's Geraldo Rivera, who is conservative and supported Donald Trump, also calling this out now. And quick question, Garland, why is it that Tim Walz, he did give that warning. Many of us have been saying for quite some time, somebody's going to get seriously hurt because of the way that the aggressiveness that the ICE agents were attacking people. And here we go. Here we are. Why didn't Tim Walz just tell the Minneapolis PD not to allow ICE to do that? Can't the local police have some type of involvement there or no?
Not really. I mean, what are they going to do? Fight them? They're in a very difficult political position, because the Minneapolis police are, the chief of, they've got a chief of police, they've got the mayor of Minneapolis. So they're, and then oftentimes when the feds come in, they claim jurisdiction. And what are you going to do? When the feds claim jurisdiction, you would have to go to court to fight it. Oftentimes, states and, various municipalities will have what's called an MOU, a memo of understanding with them that kind of articulates who has authority and when. And in more instances, more often than not, if you're a local officer, the feds often have more authority. So you're not in a position. But I mean, it's just the whole thing is preposterous. And I agree. That's what happens when you start putting federal officers on the street. That's what happens. And Tim Waltz was right, and anybody was right. And when you look at it, and they're trained by the IDF, and they're trained as soldiers and military people, we just see this going on. This is the direction that America is going. I see it's just a sad and pathetic situation, but that's where we are. And the bottom line is, because people still think, you got people that think, well, if I vote for the Democrats, they'll get us out of that. You know what I mean? If and then the Republicans, oh, well, if we vote for Trump, he's going to come in. And people haven't figured out yet that, you're a member of a fan club with these two parties, that it's a joke.
I think Nico brought up a really good point, too, about the hypocrisy. Because, again, this year I'm looking to see if people are being consistent. And he brought up the reference here to Ashley Babbitt.
Wrong than they did. And yet here you see two ICE agents cheering for what took place yesterday. So I'm thinking, given the evidence here, there shouldn't be any debate. I'm thinking, given that Renee was killed on January 7th, one day after January 6th, where Ashley Babbitt was killed, and MAGA people never let us forget that she should have never been killed, that we should all be on the same page. Because I actually agree with them. But I underestimated how far some people are willing to go to seek validation from fascists.
And that's the part,
These are political positions. If it's a member of my team, well, then I support them. If it's a member of the other team, then I know everything's wrong with the other team. It's sickening, and that's why I said, this blue team, red team crap, that's what it produces. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're on one of these teams, that's all you get. If you're on a blue team or the red team, all you get is to cheer for your team. It's like watching a football game. The people on the field are getting a check. You ain't getting a check. You're not part of the team. You're cheering for the team. There's nothing really in it for you. So guess what? All they get to do is, they're on the red team. Oh my gosh, a member of my team was injured. You hit my quarterback illegally. You should get a flag. And then when your guy hits the other quarterback and they throw a flag, hey, wait a minute. He didn't touch the quarterback. That's it. This is emotional stuff. This is tribalism. So they know that when Ashley Babbitt was a conservative or whatever, well, then they know she shouldn't have been shot. They don't even need to see the video. And all you got to do is look at Trump's political statement. He just made stuff up. He just made it up, because if it was true, hey, he'd be right. So who cares? Just say it. And Trump is a caricature of what I'm saying. He's an absurd, preposterous example of it, but on a more muted level. That's what everybody's doing if you're a member of one of these two crazy parties.
I just want to tell everybody, please be careful, like out there, whether you're protesting or not, because I really think they want chaos, Garland. I think the Trump administration wants chaos. I think they want people to respond in such a way to, whether it's ICE agents or the National Guard, anyone else, because I feel like they want to use that as an excuse to ramp up Palantir and increase the surveillance state.
They're going to do that anyway. They can't ramp it up any more than they are. They're ramping all that stuff up anyway. Doesn't matter what you do. If you don't do it, if you do it, they're going to do it. But I would say this to people. I used to teach a class called Know Your Rights when I was with the law enforcement. I used to go to colleges and teach it. But one of the things I would say to people is this: in your interactions with law enforcement, keep in mind that even if you're 100% right, they can still shoot you, and they may shoot you. And always keep in mind that the best thing to do is, we can challenge it later in court. Just, if the officers were there, I would say, turn your car off and put your hands on the steering wheel. Turn your car. Don't do nothing. Turn your car off. We can deal with it later. We can go to court later. We can sue later. Turn your car off, put your hands on the steering wheel. Because, and now she didn't know that. She didn't know her rights. She didn't know her constitution. She didn't know what she was supposed to do. She just panicked, and look what happened. She lost her life. But so my advice to people is, if the cops ever pull up on you or whatever, if you're walking up the street and some cops walk up to you, just say, officer, no matter what they say, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? Anything they ask you, guard, Mr. Nixon, what are you doing here? Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? If they say, well, you're being detained, officer, I don't answer any questions without my lawyer present. If they say you're free to go, officer, I will be leaving now. Turn around slowly and walk away. That's the only thing you should do. You can't control anything else. but make sure, because it's a very dangerous situation when you're around law enforcement. And even if they're held accountable, it don't do you no good if they shoot you and then they're held accountable later.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Garland Nixon, thank you so much for coming on to give the
bad news, the cynical bad news
okay,
about that.
That's okay. People need to hear it, because I don't want this to happen to anyone else. You know what I mean? Like, people need to know. And I want everybody to be safe. And seeing that yesterday, that really like did something to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, you know, like that could be anybody. I think about all the protests that we've all participated in. You see what I'm saying?
Remember these words, people. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? Remember these words. Mr. Nixon, I'd like to look in your trunk. Officer, I do not allow searches without a warrant. Hello? Yes, Officer Smith is here, sir. May I come in? Officer, you cannot enter my house without a warrant.
Yeah.
I just want to talk to you. We're doing a survey. Officer, I cannot allow you in my house without a warrant. Click. Doors closed. I cannot allow no searches ever. Well, you don't mind if I look in your trunk, do you? Officer, I do not allow searches without a warrant. Am I being detained or am I free to go? Officer, I do not answer questions without my lawyer present.
Yeah, that's a big one. Garland Nixon, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad I could come in here in a way I am, but it made me feel even worse. Thanks a lot, Sabrina. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.